Power of Four. Shift your perspective to change your life. Hello, everyone. I'm Jenny Capella. Welcome to the Power of Four. And today I have a guest with me, Evan Gregor. Evan owns a company called Inner Work, and he's a coach. He works with people on emotional release and healing, self-expression, negative thinking, self-sabotage. I've actually worked with Evan before myself, and I really appreciate his very customized approach to working with his clients. Now, Evan fits in perfectly also with the Power of Four concept, which is about shifting your perspective from being against something to being for something. And in his case, the shift in perspective is all about moving from a repair mindset to a relationship mindset, which he'll talk about in just a little bit. Now, today we're also going to do a demo so that you can get a sense of his work. And I have something that I'm bringing to the table today, and he'll work with me to walk through it. So with that, I'll say, Evan, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to
You're
be here.
welcome. All right. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got into this work in the first place?
Sure. My primary profession, still to this day, is as a jazz musician, and that can be very stressful and have all sorts of its own, challenges and stress, perfectionism, etc. So I got into just looking for different ways of working with my emotions, different ways of processing stress, being able to feel a little more comfortable, being very introverted in a field that requires some social, connections with other musicians and outgoing stuff. So various techniques, many of which you've probably seen or used yourself, and just started exploring those, getting into as well as meditation. So things that might fall more on the spiritual side and then things more on the emotional work side. So just really needing it for myself, I got a lot of value in it and started doing it more and more, getting involved in, communities, whether that's online or in person, of other people who are interested in these processes. And as I started doing them, I started doing partner work with people and started studying with different people who are, professionals in some form or another themselves. It just sort of organically led into me becoming a facilitator, basically informally, right? Just swapping with partners and stuff like that. And then I got my clinical EFT certification about a year ago, EFT tapping. And I lean heavily into that. I used to do a variety of things, and I still sort of do, as you know, but if someone's comfortable with tapping and comfortable with exploring it, I really like incorporating that because of the evidence and the building evidence and the effort to sort of legitimize the process as far as it actually having an effect on the body and the nervous system, and doing studies with veterans and people with diagnosed PTSD and things of that nature. So it's getting more and more formalized and, you could say, serious for me with time.
Right. So it's basically, maybe you could tell them a little bit about the process in terms of why is it that you're touching certain parts of the face, and does it, correspond to different things in the body, and really why it is that you would do tapping in connection, with emotional release, like how that actually physiologically and emotionally helps.
Well, the points on the body are thousands of years old in terms of them being used in some sort of therapeutic form from acupressure, Chinese meridian system. So if you do like a Qigong exercise on YouTube, you'll see them tapping some of the points. And if you get acupuncture, an acupuncturist immediately recognizes these points and can tell you, okay, that's the gallbladder point, these different meridians as they lie on the body. So that's something that is centuries old. And what's cool is in more recent times, they're studying it more to see, oh, there actually is a difference versus tapping a little here versus actually on the meridian point, now that we have the technology to measure these things and where nerves are actually more concentrated, all sorts of interesting things like that. So basically on the most simplistic level is that touch in general is good for the human body, right? If you're comfortable with it and at least touching yourself, making some point of contact. So even doing that, you are technically in the realm of having some somatic component, which is really important. You hear a lot about somatic therapies these days, and incorporating some level of touch, some movement of the body in and of itself can be very helpful. These points, which can send a signal of calming to the limbic system, to the nervous system. And what that's doing is, if you are working through something that's challenging, a sense of stress or fear comes up, your mind is generally thinking about something that you perceive as stressful or fearful, whether that's a memory or a future you're anticipating. And the two are often, closely linked together, as you know. So if your mind or your physiology is experiencing something that's stressful, tapping on these points while that's in your mind is basically sending a signal like, I'm actually okay, I'm actually safe right now. And you're giving voice, usually when you're doing a tapping round with me or someone doing it, you're not denying your feelings, like, no, everything's fine. It's not that. It's, yes, I recognize I'm feeling the stress. I'm totally honoring all of this anxiety and all of these fears and all the memories and all the associations that are coming up in a way that's manageable, of course. But I'm also helping process that, which means also decoupling the association of the fear and stress. So it's like I'm holding an image in my mind on some level. That doesn't mean you're like forcefully visualizing. It just means, okay, we're talking about something that's stressful to me. I'm signaling a sense of calm. I'm beginning to decouple the stressful response with that stimulus.
Mm.
So you're looking to kind of break that cycle of fight, flight. Okay, oh, this thought makes me fearful, which makes my body tense up, which makes me think another fearful thought, which leads me down another road, right? The somatic component and the way it's done really helps to break that cycle, as well as it's practical. Like, you can do this, you can watch a video, you don't have to buy some expensive course or believe any really philosophical or spiritual ideas to do it. And it's self-testable, right? Like, in the sense, okay, one client, for example, couldn't get on an airplane, now they can.
Mm.
Call that what you want, whether that's a placebo, even if you believe that's a placebo, the point is they can fly now. Right? So it's not just, I'm not looking just for abstract, like, I felt a little bit of calm after I did that, which is cool, there's nothing wrong with that. But EFT, and the way I just described it there, they're using that to study things like combat veterans dealing with PTSD,
Mm.
and actually looking for sustained over months, changes in the, what's the term, like, do they still have the symptoms that make them
Mm.
diagnosable as having clinical PTSD, right? So it's very real in that sense, more and more, I feel like.
Yeah, and to your point about how it can work with your nervous system, I know that when I've done different tapping rounds, as they sometimes call it, my breathing just starts deepening without me doing anything. And about halfway through, I'll notice, oh my gosh, my breathing is just so much deeper. I just feel calmer. Even if I'm in the middle of something that might be during the round that might be feeling upsetting, still my body is processing it differently. So I
Yeah.
really agree with what you've said. And I'm really curious to hear what you believe and feel about the whole concept of we're a repair project, that's how society is wired. We've got to affirm our way out of things, and we can't think negatively. We got to think positively. And, I really appreciate that about your style. And I'd love to hear how you feel about that and how you came up with that for yourself.
Yeah, on the one side, there's toxic positivity, and we can kind of put that aside for now, because that's very rampant in the self-help world, where it's like, no, it's good vibes only. You got to just think happy thoughts, that which can totally suppress what's actually going on.
Mm.
But in my observation, where I started exploring this more, is even people like myself who are interested in doing, going to therapy, doing tapping, doing, and again, I want to make it clear that what I'm suggesting with tapping and everything is not considered a substitute for therapy, psychotherapy. So people who are interested in, quote unquote, working on themselves in that way, they're really interested in finding what patterns and trauma and things might be held in the body. There is a mindset that can very easily happen, and that can be fully adopted without your conscious awareness, that, okay, I am now aware that there are emotions to be processed, there might be trauma to be healed, etc. So now I conceptualize myself as like a broken car with all these broken parts, and now I need this therapy to fix that. Oh my gosh, I have an inner child, I didn't even know I had that. That's another thing that's wrong with me, right? And that mindset, that spirit, can really, really impact the effectiveness of the work you're doing on yourself, and can really impact the relationship you have with yourself. Because ultimately, my opinion is these tools are to make your life better, not to give you another model of perfection, which our society is very good at. So you are now looking at techniques like tapping and going to therapy, etc., as these are ways to fix broken parts of myself so that I can hustle more and work harder and make more money and do all these things that, I believe I'm supposed to do. So you start seeing yourself as just this almost inanimate object that you need to
Mhm.
fix and repair versus, okay, what if the difference is, what if I'm like a very high functioning computer, the most brilliant computer that ever existed on the planet, but that computer has a program in it, all sorts of programs based on things that happened that say, okay, we don't let you go into this territory because that's unsafe. We don't let you go there because that's unsafe. Now, that's different than a broken computer, right? If you're like hitting it with a hammer saying, why won't this let me do it?
Mhm.
It's actually a software issue, could be one example, right? Like there's nothing physically wrong with the body, mind, nervous system. Now there could be, which is why you don't exclude getting an MRI, et cetera, if you're having those types of symptoms. But I'm speaking from the framework of, okay, you're doing emotional work. How are you conceptualizing it? Are you seeing that I have this anxiety coming up consistently around this topic as what's wrong with me? What's broken? I need the technique to just go in there and fix it versus, okay, this computer was programmed to say this isn't safe. Let's assume that because your nervous system, body, mind are very intelligent, there was an actual reason for that. Something actually happened when I was younger, or I imagined something that made me very afraid and it tightened up my body. We want to work with that in a way that's gentle and curious and say, oh, interesting. Okay, this fear is coming up. I wonder why that's here. And how can I be compassionate towards myself that I have this? That's not just a semantic shift. That will actually affect how you approach, quote unquote, working with that fear. You could do tapping saying, I found that I'm afraid of going on stage. I need to tap away this fear, right? Let me get rid of it. Let me get rid of the fear. Oh, I did this tapping round. The fear is still here. The fear is your enemy. You're broken for having it, right? Let me meditate. Oh, I'm going to visualize myself on stage and do all these affirmations and say, I'm the best performer. And now you're kind of at war with the fear, right? You're using quote unquote self-love techniques, but the spirit of it is there's something wrong with me. I got to get rid of it. Whereas if you're curious about the fear and assuming, okay, there's a logic, there's an intelligence to this, let me find out what's actually happening here and be more kind to myself in the process, that fear can actually come to the surface. It can reveal what it needs to reveal to you. It can do whatever it has to do in the body and so on. And if you're fighting it the whole time, you never really get there in some cases.
Yeah, and I really like what you just said because I noticed that sometimes it's a very subtle difference. Like when I'm tapping with myself and I'm like, okay, Jenny, we're just going to sit here and give myself so much love, right? So there's, yeah, you know where I'm going with this. There's this agenda, even with that, like you might think, okay, well, gosh, I hear what Evan's saying or what Jenny's saying, and I'm just going to sit there and just love myself more. But even behind that, sometimes, can you talk a little bit about how that could even be agenda based versus what you're talking about, which is a very gentle, compassionate curiosity?
Yeah, it's I could go on forever, so I'll try to be more succinct with it. But for the example of, okay, I'm going to sit here and tell myself I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. Or is that an actual act of self-love, or is that a technique you're doing to make something change or go away? Now, of course, you actually want something to change. I mean, that's why any of us are doing this work in the first place. So I'm looking for that sweet spot between not pretending there's no problem and just bypassing and saying, well, who cares? There's no reality of whatever, right? No, I'm afraid of going on stage. I know I actually want to shift that. But if I am just saying, oh, I love myself, and then going, I hope this gets rid of the fear, the agenda is I want to get rid of the fear. And the words are things that sound like self love, but they don't necessarily have much to do with actual self love,
Mm.
right? That's one of the tricks of the brain for me with all of this type of work is like, I try to make it very practical and real. So the more real you are, just like the more real you are in a conversation, the more what's actually happening can come to the surface, the more an actual conversation can take place. It's just like if you meet a person who's like, I love and light, and they're very pretentious about it, but you don't know what's going on under the hood. They don't necessarily conduct their lives or their businesses that way, right? It's very easy to say, I'm just going to be with myself and love myself and just be present in a very spiritual way. But that can just be words you're saying in your head, right? And you can, to make it practical, like in the conversation, right? If you're good friends with someone, being a friend to someone isn't, you don't hang out with each other and go, you're so awesome. No, you're so awesome. No, I love you so much. No, I love you so much. That's not an actual relationship, right? An
Hmm.
actual relationship is, hey, you seem upset today. Like, what's going on? And being sensitive to, don't just overly give advice, right? It's a real dynamic. You don't just Google, well, what do I say to my friend when she's sad? And then this is the thing I say to sad people, right? It's real. It's
Exactly.
an actual interaction. And so the more you can look at the dynamics within yourself as there is a fear here that has a life, an energy, something behind it. How do I interact with that in a way that I'm actually communicating? I'm making an actual effort to communicate. Right? Just saying I love you to it, you don't necessarily mean it. I love you, but I want you to go away. Like, well, why are you saying you love me? Nothing about your behavior for the last
Mm.
2 decades suggests in any way that you love me. You've been
Mhm.
ignoring me the whole time. Like, what's actually happening here? Right? You're facilitating a conversation.
Yeah, that's really well said. And it really is about authenticity. And I notice that sometimes when I start going into this practice, I'll feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so mad at myself because I can't be compassionate with myself. And that's like a whole nother layer. And I almost feel like sometimes, it's important even to just tap on that first, right? The whole thing of I'm so mad at myself because I can't do this tapping right. I mean, it's
Exactly.
really what you're saying is so valid about just breathing and just taking a moment and just going, okay, this is a relationship. It's organic, it's natural, it needs to flow. And how would I treat somebody that was, speaking with me and telling me that they were upset about something? I would not sit there and say, you got to love yourself. You got to love yourself, as you have mentioned earlier. So before we go into, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Uh, but unfortunately, that is the advice. I mean, that is the Instagram quote thing, right? People have real struggles going on, and the advice we are often hearing is you just need to love yourself more. You just need to be more kind to yourself. I mean, that's great in an abstract, but that's sort of like if I give you a basketball and you want to learn how to play basketball and say, well, just put it in the basket. Well, how? What are the
Exactly.
mechanics of actually loving yourself, and what does that actually look like in reality?
Yeah, very good. So before we do a demo of this, because I want to move into that, I remember in the book that you wrote, and everybody, you need to get his book, and it's called I'm Not a Repair Project. Is that what it's called? Or You're Not a Repair Project?
You're not a repair
You're not
project.
a
Yeah.
repair, yeah, you're not a repair project. So in there, you give the example of the car and you say, what if there's a car that was built to go 40 miles an hour? That's just what that particular car does and has about itself. But you're expecting it to, be like a Ferrari and race down the road. Can you say a little bit more about, I know you talked about it earlier about, hey, we are built a certain way and we've have all these wonderful systems in us and things that, we don't want to necessarily bypass or push at. But like this car analogy with 40, I really liked that in the book. Can you say more about that?
Oh, sure. And that's just a free ebook, by the way. If anyone wants it, you can just download it for free. The car analogy is similar to the computer analogy, where if a car has a safety mechanism on that says we don't allow you to go past 40, right? The car might be able technically to go to 100, right? And I believe probably all of us humans have a lot more capacity than we might be experiencing, or a lot more energy, or a lot more capability, whatever it might be, because we have different things that have happened to us that are affecting us, right? So if you think of a car having a safety mechanism on it that says there's something in the programming that says we don't trust this driver to go past 40. So we have a lock on, right? And now if you look at that car and go, well, the car's broken. And now, like the computer, I'm trying to bang on it. I'm trying to take it to the look under the hood. I'm taking it to people, say, what's wrong with it? And they say, there's nothing wrong. The engine's fine. The brain is okay. The nervous system is okay. The brakes are working, but it won't go past 40. You have to explore, well, what is the mechanism that's actually saying we don't allow it to go past 40, right? So I'm just imagining there's a computer in the car. You would have to learn, wait, okay, how do I speak to that computer? What is the programming language?
Mm,
Right? If I just keep banging under the hood saying the engine's broken, what's wrong with this thing?
mhm.
You're not looking where the problem is, or approaching it with the kind of tool set that could actually say, oh, now that we trust that you're safe to go a little faster, we'll grant you the permission to go a little faster. And I actually sort of see the nervous system in many cases operating like that,
Mm,
where I don't generally look at working with people as we're just going to blow away this block or limitation. It's like, can we find a place where it feels safe enough, where there's enough flexibility? We say, is it okay to test? How about I go 41 for a day, and if nothing happens in that whole day or 2 weeks, maybe that can become the new set point, right? You're working with something, so it begins to trust you based on experience.
yeah, that's very well said. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, so let's go for it. Let's do a demo together. And my subject that I want to work on today is I have a whole new part of my business that I'm starting, and I'm going to be moving away from another part of my business that I want to move and make a shift into the new part of the business, and it's kind of stressful. So I'd love to tap on that today.
Okay, great. Yeah, so just take a moment to feel into this whole world of moving away from some things, incorporating some other things. Right. And even just talking about that, I'm just what you've said so far. I'm curious if one aspect is bringing up more emotion. For example, is it what you're leaving? There's a fear of leaving that, or is it what you're going towards? Do either of those directions light up brighter than the
Hmm,
other?
that's a really good question. I would say I'm noticing myself when you say that, like almost clinging to the thing I'm leaving. Like, uh-oh, what if the income isn't going to come soon enough from what I'm moving toward? So kind of not really being in a healthy way, letting go of it. So I would say more on that.
Okay. So if it feels okay, we'll use that direction more.
That
There,
makes
I'm
sense.
feeling fear around letting go of some things in my business that I want to
Yes.
change.
Yes.
That feels like it's accurate.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and just start tapping on your collarbone even while we just
Okay.
extract a little more info if it's there. So as you've described it as a almost gripping, right? Like a clinging, you said. Yeah. Do you feel that in your body in any type of way as well?
Yeah. Like right now, I feel my throat's getting constricted. Um, it feels like my shoulders are cinched up, like I gotta plow through. That's the
Mm.
mindset that's going with the body feelings that I've got. Got to plow through one more time of having to get through something so I can get to the other side. Those are the things that are coming up. So shoulders and throat,
Yeah, that shoulders in your throat on a 1 to 10, how intense would you say they are?
8,
Oh, okay, it's very strong. So let's just go right into it here on the side of the hand and repeating after me, even though
even though
there's all of this tension
there's all of this tension
in my throat and shoulders
in my throat and shoulders
around letting go
around letting go
of this aspect of my business.
of this aspect of my business.
I choose to honor and accept myself as best I can,
I choose to honor and accept myself as best as I can,
even though there's all this tightness,
even though there's all this tightness,
a sense of clinging.
a sense of clinging.
I feel it in my throat and my shoulders,
I feel it in my throat and in my shoulders.
and there's some fears around letting go
And there's some fears around letting go
this aspect of the business.
this aspect of the business.
It provides income.
It provides income.
There might be other things it provides.
There might be other things it provides.
So naturally, there's some resistance here.
So naturally, there's some resistance here.
I choose to honor what I'm feeling about this,
I choose to honor what I'm feeling about this,
even though there's all this resistance,
even though there's all this resistance,
this tightness in my shoulders and throat,
this tightness in my shoulders and throat,
this feeling of clinging,
this feeling of clinging.
but I also have to plow through.
But I also have to plow through.
There's a lot entangled here,
There's a lot entangled here.
and I feel it pretty strongly in my body.
And I feel it pretty strongly in my body.
And I choose to honor and accept what's here as best I can.
And I choose to honor and accept myself as best as I can what's here.
Yeah, great. Now we're just going to tap through the points and still repeating after me. This tightness,
This tightness,
this feeling in my chest,
this feeling in my chest,
this tightness in my throat.
this tightness in my throat,
It's like I have to plow through.
like I have to plow through.
It's pretty strong in my body.
It's pretty strong in my body,
It's like it's ready for action.
like it's ready for action.
Would you say it's also bracing in any way?
Yes, bracing,
It's also bracing. Yeah.
bracing.
And so there's conflict there.
So there's conflict there.
There's things I feel I need to plow through.
There's things I need to plow through or feel I need to plow through,
Mhm. But it also means letting go
but it also means letting go
of some aspects of my business
of some aspects of my business
that may provide some security.
that may provide some security.
I mentioned I have income from this,
I mentioned I have income from this,
and it's pretty hard
and it's pretty hard
to let go of things that produce income
to let go of things that produce income
because no matter what people like to say
because no matter what people like to say
about mindset and creating your own reality,
about mindset and creating your own reality,
uh, the companies that collect the bills
the companies that collect the bills
and landlords
and the landlords
and the banks,
and the banks,
they only accept money
they only accept money
in the form of the income I'm getting.
in the form of the income I'm getting.
So I respect that my body feels this way.
So I respect that my body feels this way.
I might be making a pretty big ask.
I might be making a pretty big ask.
I'm actually asking it.
I'm actually asking it.
Can we begin to let go of something
Can we begin to let go of something
that in our current world
that in our current world
helps meet a lot of my survival needs?
helps meet a lot of my survival needs?
I understand how challenging that might be,
I understand how challenging that might be,
but I also want to check in and see,
but I also want to check in and see,
is it possible we can work together on this?
is it possible we can work together on this?
Because my intention
Because my intention
is not to just let go of my income
is not to just let go of my income
and hope for the best.
and hope for the best.
I'm looking to create something else.
I'm looking to create something else.
I'm looking to create something better
I'm looking to create something better
that would also bring in income.
that would also bring in income.
And the more comfortable I feel doing that,
And the more comfortable I feel doing that,
the more likely I will be able
the more likely I'll be able
to do that smoothly and successfully.
to do that smoothly and successfully.
So, what do you feel you need?
So what do you feel you need?
This energy in my shoulders and my throat,
This energy in my shoulders and in my throat,
and all of my body, mind, and nervous system.
and all of my body, mind, and nervous system.
What do you need to feel more okay about this?
What do you need to feel more okay about this?
What do I need to hear
What do I need to hear
about perhaps how I pace this
about how I pace this, perhaps,
or how I approach it?
or how I approach it?
Or what do I need to have in place first
Or what do I need to have in place first
before you feel more safe letting go?
before you feel more safe letting go?
I'm not here to tell you to let go.
I'm not here to tell you to let go.
I'm here to find out what we need
I'm here to find out what we need
so that we have what we need,
so that we have what we need,
so that letting go feels more and more okay,
so that letting go feels more and more okay,
and that we're moving to something better
that we're moving to something better
versus just getting rid
versus just getting rid
of our source of survival.
of our source of survival.
I would not ask that of us.
I would not ask that of us.
So just being really open to what I need here
So just being really open to what I need here
and being curious through this whole process.
and being curious through this whole process.
Let's pause there and take a breath. And with that, also check in with just the physical sensation of your shoulders and your throat and see if that is responding in any way to what we've done.
Yes, definitely more relaxed in both cases. And actually, my whole body feels like it's more relaxed. And I didn't have to try and get it to do anything or be more relaxed or meditate it away. It just naturally responded to that. And I really appreciate a lot of the cues that you brought up, some things I wouldn't have even thought of, which, by the way, to those watching, there's going to be a slide at the end of this that gives Evan's contact information, including how to have a download to his book to be able to work with Evan, because I've done this for myself successfully, but boy, it can really be helpful to have an objective facilitator with you that's hearing things that you might not be able to hear while you're doing it for yourself, kind of like a surgeon operating on themselves in some ways. So
Mhm.
in fact, do you want to say a little bit more about that, about the power of potentially working with a facilitator?
Sure. I guess first I would say that for anyone watching or exploring this, if you are, I'm going to say just tapping on like, hey, I have this fear and anxiety and you're tapping, that is great. Like, there's no reason to not do that. That will help. And I'm all for that. When you're working with someone one on one, they're able to kind of go beyond that, ideally, to see, okay, what's driving that, right? What are and asking questions where you don't have to be the questioner and the answerer, right? So you can just sit back, and when I say like, how do you feel that in your body, you get to just tune in and say, okay, chest, throat, and then I get to ask another question that helps connect some of the dots, right? And then what might be a little bit more my own style, although there's plenty of great people I've seen do a similar type of thing. Whereas I'm not just saying, for example, this fear, this tightness in my chest and shoulders, I'm trying to get you to release. Like, we're safe. I didn't say that necessarily. It's a little more. Now, if you were flooding, we might have to do something else and say, reorient to the fact that you're safe. But I'm asking, what do you need to feel safe, right? What's happening? What is your body, mind, and nervous system telling you versus my goal is I want to transition. Now, how do I make my body and mind and nervous system do what I want it to do?
Mm,
Right? That's sort of the repair versus relationship mindset. It's like, no, there's another being or energy or person who is saying, I don't feel comfortable moving on. Jenny wants to move on. I'm not comfortable yet. Right?
mm.
So that's the conversation, some of the questions I was asking. What would we need to feel more okay? What is it? And acknowledging, yes, I'm asking you to let go of something that provides your needs, and to much of your system, that's its primary job. So
Right. And before we start wrapping up here, one last thing about the points. So there's 9 of them, maybe? I don't know what the count is, but
there's a lot. Like, there's points on the fingers, um there's under the chest. The ones I see the most, the ones I default to the most, are the ones you'll see on a lot of videos, which is just, side of the eyes, this side, under eye, under nose, under mouth, collarbone, kind of in the armpit and the top of the head. There's if you just Google EFT points, you'll get a million things showing it. I have a video on my channel that I made just because there's some newer research about showing kind of that it makes a difference if you're a little bit precise about it, but you can't really do it wrong. I mean, it's still going to be good for you. But there are, because if you think about acupuncture and like actual meridian points, there's a lot. One that you won't see as much, but there's another tech. Actually, the full EFT process has this back of the hand, nine gamma point, and actually does eye movements, eye circles. Right? So you won't see that so much on videos, but like, I've taken sessions where I've done that, of course, especially in certification process, can be quite powerful. So you will see different people using different points. A lot of it is just sort of personal taste, even habit at times.
that makes sense. And the main thing is, though, that you're connecting your body with the process, with the tapping. I
Yeah.
mean, that's on some points that are really going to help you work through it. So is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up here today?
Just to reinforce it, I mean, I assume anyone listening to a podcast like yours is interested in working on themselves in some way, and to just keep that perspective in mind as much as you can, that this is about developing a more and more healthy, positive relationship with yourself, so that when stresses and anxieties and challenging situations arise in your life, you feel better equipped to be present with them, to handle them, to work through them and with them, versus I'm doing all these techniques and listening to all these podcasts to try to become some perfected ideal. I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with me and what's broken with me and fix it, versus becoming really curious, because it's quite fascinating the fact that you even exist in the first place, and that
Mhm.
these thoughts and beliefs come up, and you can have one thought about leaving your job and then your body and your shoulders get tight. If you take just the moment to go, wow, that's really, really fascinating, because it is. I mean, geez, just think about the fact that you can just have that thought and then all of this stuff happens in your body. If you become childlike curious about that versus how do I just make my body do what I want it to do, it's so much, not only are the results better, but it's such a more fascinating and interesting process.
Thank you. Excellent point. I was just thinking about the kid example, where as a kid, they're like, wow, mom, look at this. My shoulders, they're changing and I feel,
Yes.
it's you know, it's just that, present with it. They're not overanalyzing it. They haven't been taught to do that yet at that point. So that's a
You
really
haven't
good
been
point.
taught that it's a quote unquote block that you need to find the limiting belief and get rid of it. Once you're kind of indoctrinated into that, it can take all of the life out of it. Right?
Mhm. Thank you so much for being with us today. It was so interesting, and I had that wonderful tapping session with you too. I hope you all enjoyed that, everybody. And just remember to stick all the way through to the end for the slide, which is going to have Evan's complete contact information. There'll also be some information in the description area below this video. Thank you so much again. Have a good day.